Welcome back to Tiny Grimes Games. I'm here with another Star Wars Destiny video, and today we're going to finish up our Rivals set review, looking at it from a draft perspective. What's good, what's bad, what's amazing. So let's take a look at the non-dice cards. Let's start with Tinker. Tinker is really good. Turning one of your dice to a side showing a value of 1 is so terrible and constructed that if you don't think about how good this card can be in draft, you might miss it. There's not a ton of removal. So turning aside to a resource, that can be incredibly powerful. I saw a friend yesterday turn aside to a discard to finish milling his opponent. Turning it to a focus to be able to then focus that other die to something really strong. Tinker is a next level card that you can generally play, especially later in the turn after you've already rolled out your guys. One die got removed. Oh, that's the removal for the turn. That's the removal. Now you're okay. You can Tinker knowing you're going to make it. Tinker's really strong for what it is. There's all these cool zero-cost events that do good things. Hidden Motive. This card is bananas good. This card might actually be constructed playable. I hadn't thought about how good this card is. You think about it this way. Your opponent rolls out their good side. Let's say it's a 2 melee side. Let's say it's Anakin, and they have the two melee sides. So you basically get to re-roll their die, and they either hit a bad side or the die goes away. Anakin might not be a best example because he has the special as well, but we'll say like a Rebel Trooper. It has 3 guns on it. It either hits another gun and goes away, or now they have to use another die, another card to re-roll it. So Hidden Motive is really, really strong in draft. It's one of my favorite cards. I put it in every single blue deck. It's amazing. Targeting Computer, it's not as good. It's okay because removal is so bad. I've used it. And when you use it offensively, I think it can be decent. Like, it depends on your deck. If you have some supports in there or some really good upgrades that you want to turn something to, and you're thinking, I'm going to be using this offensively 9 times out of 10, I think it can be really good, or at least decent. And then it can be good against your opponent if they happen to have an amazing support or upgrade. But paying 1, you're basically paying 1 to make them reroll, which is not always the best approach. Money is still scarcer than cards, so that one's a little bit dicey. So when I'm playing red, I'll sometimes play it. Sometimes I won't. And to be honest, I'll often play it. Just because it can be very hard to get to 30 cards that are decent. So I try to get to 30. Alright, let's look at these guys. There's some really good cards in here. Fight Back is really good. This is probably the best removal you'll often have in your deck, is your 1 copy of Fight Back. It's a really good card. Try to find the right moment to use it. It's just really, really good. Emulate is also a pretty dang good card. I play it anytime I'm playing Anakin. I play this card. Sometimes when I'm playing Jawa, because remember, it's turn a character die to any side if there are 2 or more copies of that character in play. It's not 2 or more of your copies. You don't have to run 2 Jawas or something. This is, I'm playing Anakin, my opponent plays Anakin. For 0, I can either offensively turn a die or defensively turn a die. It is an amazing card. It's worth playing always if you're running Anakin. A lot of people, especially at the beginning, are all running Anakin. I say run it. Supply Pack. I don't even remember this card. I haven't run it yet. So for 1, exhaust this upgrade to reroll any number of attached character or upgrade dice. That actually seems reasonable. The problem is it costs 1, and you're usually not having a lot of stuff on your guy. So let's say you have an upgrade and the character has 1 die, and you put another $1 into him to supply pack. So you're basically paying that $1 to reroll 2 or 1 dice when you could have just discarded a card to do it anyway. So that's why I tend not to run supply pack. It just feels like a waste to me. I'd rather have something else in that slot. I'd rather not pay $1 to reroll usually. Resourceful seems really good to me. I haven't run a Jawa yet. but when I do, I'll definitely run it. Spot a great character, remove one of your dice to gain a resource. That's amazing, right? It's any character, the beginning of the game, boom, I got $3 now. I can play that 3-cost upgrade that I drafted. That's money. That's a great card if you got a Jawa or some other great guy. Bespin Wingguard is interesting. Exhaust the support and spend a resource to force an opponent to choose and discard a card from their hand. So it's a really interesting card in that, like, it costs a lot, right? It costs 1 to play, and there's 1 every time you use it, and it can have a really low impact on the game. Like, forcing your opponent to choose a card to discard every turn is not great unless you're running a mill deck. If you're running a mill deck, it's pretty solid. But it's actually not bad either. I've seen this used to pretty great effect where if they play this early, it's really frustrating. Like, I've had these games where, you know, you got 3 cards in your hand and you want to do a reroll, and then you're like, man, if it doesn't hit, I really need to reroll again, but I also want this other card that I wasn't planning on getting rid of, and then they're going to Bespin Wingguard me, and then I'm going to be down to 1, and then I won't be able to reroll because I have to keep this upgrade. So it definitely has its moments, even outside of a mill deck, where it can be really good. So I think it just depends on your draft. I'm torn on it. I'm going to have to revisit this card later to give it a more concrete decision on whether or not I'm going to be playing it in my draft decks. Right now, I feel like it's not an auto-include, but it's also not a bad card either. Surprise attack, resolve 1 of your dice showing damage, increasing its value by 1. So this card basically says, pay $1 and a card for a damage. It's pretty awful, but I've used it, and it's been really good and killed guys with it. So this is one of those cards where, like, I'm fine if I need to get to 30 putting this in there. But if I have 30 cards that I'm pretty happy with, surprise attack's not making the cut. Especially since it's neither villain nor hero. If I'm playing an Anakin deck, I would put a unplayable villain card in my deck over surprise attack just to be able to trigger Anakin with it. Since I'm probably re-rolling either way with them, that would be how I would look at it. So it's okay. I generally don't play it, but I don't think it's unplayable. Alright, the last 2 cards, the Battlefields. I don't know what I think about Battlefields yet. This is a place where I think Battlefields are probably the most advanced part of Star Wars Destiny, and I don't consider myself to be advanced yet enough in draft to be able to very quickly during a draft to be able to say, yes, I actually have a pretty fast deck for draft, because I'm comparing everything still to Constructed, and every deck looks obscenely slow. So claim a resource if you have no resources. I really like this one, actually, because there's a lot of skill in this one. That there's the skill of, like, okay, I could take this last resource, but, you know, I'll just claim the battlefield, get to go first, get the resource because I don't have any, or, like, I can take extra plays because I see my opponent does have a resource. And any battlefield that doesn't have a serious negative but has a skill component interests me a lot, because I feel like one of the things of draft is it's that place where casual and veteran players can come together, and any of these little cards are going to give me an advantage over the more casual player when we actually go to play the games are cards I'm interested in. So I definitely like Dry Fields. Sith Temple, I don't know. Remove a dice to deal 1 unblockable damage to a character is not as scary to me, because I feel like the better player is, like, setting up these moments where they can leave 1 more damage on their guys, so they get 1 more rollout with them. And I feel like this card kind of wrecks the more skilled player in that way, that the newer player just, maybe they get lucky on that turn and they're able to resolve faster, and they take this battlefield and they kill your guy. And so I just feel like Sith Temple has a bigger downside to it, and since I'm not totally comfortable realizing how fast my deck is going to be, and I feel like it varies so much turn to turn based on what you roll, that Sith Temple for me is one I haven't been using yet. I played with it once, an opponent had it, and it was really interesting. I was the more skilled player in that matchup, and I was able to use it to pretty good effect. He got it, like, once or twice when it didn't really do anything, and I was able to take it once or twice when it had a really profound effect on the game. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means it is a really good battlefield and it's really better for the more skilled player. But it scares me a little bit. I think Dry Fields is probably the one I'll use the most if I don't draft one. And I gotta say, I'm not drafting Battlefields right now because I don't know how. Like, if I got some weird thing where I had a million specials and the throne room came up, sure, I'd get that. But just generally, like, it's really hard for me mid-draft to be like, yes, this is the Battlefield that's going to help this deck, knowing only half of the information. So I'm still getting there. But so that is a take on the non-dice cards and the Rivals Legacies Draft and Sealed set. I hope you've had a chance to play Draft or Sealed yet. If you haven't, get on it. It's so fun. I'll see you next time on Tiny Grimes Games.